It looks like a very encouraging report. Call them better on it. Call them 71-3.
71-3.
Yeah.
Good news every time. Wonderful news. Bigger profits, bigger turnover, and so on.
But it wasn't true.
On the whole, no, it wasn't true. It wasn't true. It was false reporting.
At this point, the establishment decided to turn and fight. The old directors Rowland had placed on his board as trophies were told by the accountants about the false profits. They also discovered that Rowland had made secret payments to an ex-Tory minister called Duncan Sands. Rowland had bribed him to become chairman and make Lonhro look respectable. To the old directors, this was corrupt, and they voted to sack Tiny Rowland as chief executive.
They waited for an opportunity when Mr. Rowland was out of the country, traveling the Africa and the Gulf states, and it was only when I overheard a telephone conversation in the suite that Mr. Rowland was out having a meeting between a young lawyer, and some people in London, that I thought something was awfully wrong. And upon Mr. Rowland's return, I told him that I had a feeling something was going to happen in London.
Rowland arrived back to find there had been a boardroom coup. He was no longer in control of his company. The Lonhro affair also became a political scandal. Rowland came to symbolise the hidden corruption and fakery of the takeover tycoons. The politicians took their anger out on Rowland as the symbol of a group of sleazy nouveau riche businessmen who had tricked them. In Parliament, Edward Heath called him the unpleasant and unacceptable face of capitalism.
We have already set in hand an inquiry into the Lonhro Company. Where abuses become apparent, we shall introduce reform. We shall bring forward a new Companies Bill in the next session of Parliament. Where unfairnesses exist in our society, we shall do our utmost to correct them.
Do you regard anything of what has happened as unacceptable?
In what particular way?
Anything that has been brought to light as a result of the Lonhro affair, do you find any of that in any way the unacceptable face of capitalism?
I can't judge, because this is now escalated into a political matter, and I know so little about politics here that I just can't comment.
But Rowland decided to fight. He was convinced he still had one group of supporters left. They were the thousands of small shareholders. He summoned an EGM, an extraordinary general meeting, to ask the shareholders to vote for his reinstatement. He had made them rich. Now they must come and save him.
We walked in by the back door, and we sat in the sort of front row. When I say the front row, where the board would be, I mean the sort of... And then it started. And they all... I can't remember what resolutions were put, obviously. And they all voted for Tiny, as simple as that.
Why did they vote for Tiny?
Why? Well, I told you already, he made them a lot of money. And he was making them a lot of money. And they were all little men, or mostly, and so they were.
What do you mean, little man?
The little chap who has 1,000 shares or something, you know, or maybe 2,000, and goes to an EGM. And, you know, that's big stuff for him.
After the meeting, all of the directors that opposed him seemed to have suddenly disappeared and were never heard of again in any context, not in Lonhro.
He won.
He won. He won big. Yes, they disappeared from the stage as if shut down one by one, like a turkey shoot.
I knew it was going to happen. I was thinking, where would I go and have tea? Simple as that.
Like a flash of lightning on a dark night, Rowland's victory showed where power had now shifted in Britain. The old captains of industry and the politicians had reunited to try and defeat him and everything that he represented. But Rowland had summoned up the power of the stock market and won. But it was a Pyrrhic victory, for an event was about to occur thousands of miles away that would show that no one controlled the market. In 1973, the Arab-Israeli War broke out. One of the consequences was that the Arabs put up the price of oil by 400%. The effect on the Western economies was disastrous. In Britain, the stock market was pushed over the edge into a catastrophic crash. It finally made the politicians realise they had no control over the economy.
As Prime Minister, I want to speak to you simply and plainly about the grave emergency now facing our country. In the House of Commons this afternoon, I announced more severe restrictions on the use of electricity. We are limiting the use of electricity by almost all factories, shops and offices to 3 days a week. Jobs will be in danger and take-home pay will be less. We shall have to postpone some of the hopes and aims we have set ourselves for expansion and for our standard of living. We shall have a harder Christmas than we have known since the war.
It was a steeper fall than there had been in this country at the great crash of 1929-31. That was obviously going to wipe out a lot of financiers, speculators, punters, people who'd bought property on borrowed money, people who bought anything on borrowed money. But it was more than that. The whole post-war idea that if you got into trouble you could always print a bit more money and it would get you out and get everybody steaming along. That was what collapsed. And with it, the idea that you could manage and manipulate the economy in such a way as to be sure that it always did go steaming along.
As a result of the crash, Jim Slater went bankrupt. He retired to write children's books. Goldsmith and Rowland both survived the crash, and they left the country. Rowland returned to Africa, and Goldsmith went to America. But both swore they would return and have their revenge on the British establishment.
A nightingale sang in Berkeley